So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday. Had a good long weekend? Sort of, maybe, maybe. 3 days? Do anything fun? You slept a whole day? Okay, it's not fun, but I understand the appeal. Anyone else do anything fun? Anna? No? Normal things? Oh. What did I do? I didn't do that much. I had dinner with some people. Yeah, I ate and I slept and I watched TV and I did a very little bit of work. Yep.
That was fun.
That about covers it. Yeah, but I'm old, you know? Like, you guys are supposed to be young and exciting and, you know, doing fun things.
But it was raining.
But it was raining?
And it's coronavirus.
And what?
And it's coronavirus.
And yeah, it's coronavirus and it's raining. And what else? No. I guess you're right. It's not great conditions for exciting weekends. Okay. So here we go. So Mike is here. Good morning, Mike. And Sabrina's here. Good morning, Sabrina. Kenan's here. Hello. Good evening to you. Clara's here. Hello, Clara. George is here. Good morning, George. And Zion is here. Good morning to you. And Daniel's here. Good morning, Daniel. Sala's here. Good morning. Vicky's here. Hello. Good evening, Vicky. And Gabrielle is here. Good evening to you, Gabrielle. Okay. So, that's what we were talking about on Friday. It seems like so long ago. So on Friday we started talking about sexism, and I used this chart to kind of outline a few, I guess, talk about a few definitions and things that I wanted to have straight. Okay, no pun intended. So I wanted us to be able to make a distinction between people's sex assigned at birth, people's gender identity, and people's gender expression, right? So those things can be different, right? You can be born into a male body, but for reasons that I think science is still working out, you can have a gender identity that is female, right? But whether or not you express yourself as that gender has a lot to do with what your society will allow, right? And so here in the West anyway, or here in Canada, to be transgender is slowly becoming okay, and people are more and more comfortable expressing that. But again, decades ago, it wasn't really allowable, and so people didn't express a gender identity that was different from their sex assigned at birth, right? Because it just wasn't allowed. We said that's kind of a similar thing in terms of sexual orientation and sexual identity, right? So your sexual orientation is who you're attracted to, but your sexual identity, the one that you present to the world, also depends on what is allowable, right? And so if you're a gay man or a lesbian woman living in a country where that's not allowable, the sexual identity that you express is straight, because that's all that is safe to do, right? That's all that's really allowed. And the other thing I wanted to point out here is that really all of these things are not, I keep saying they're not connected, and they might be connected, but really what I'm trying to point out here is that we can't make assumptions about how anyone is based on how we see them, right? And so if we see someone that we identify as a female, for instance, we can't make any assumptions about her gender identity, her sexual orientation, anything like that, right? All we can do is just kind of deal with the individual. Again, but that said, there are more common situations, right? So, you know, cisgender, heterosexual people are probably the majority of people, right? Most people are like that, right? But there are people that don't fit neatly into those categories, and I just wanted to sort of make you aware of that. So we did a little exercise on Friday, if I recall, coming up with rules, right? And we said that there were lots of gender rules for anyone to learn, whether you're an alien from outer space or whether you're just a regular human who is born into a society and has to learn how to behave like the gender that they are, right? And so we came up with lots of different rules about how one should appear and walk and talk and think and act, and the things that you should like and the things that you should not like. There's all kinds of rules, right? And I think we can probably intuitively agree that this is just scratching the surface, right? There's all kinds of different things that we do in order to perform our gender roles in society, right? And again, that's because we know all those rules, because regardless of what gender we are, and regardless of what society we come from, every society has rules in terms of gender, right? We all have to follow them regardless, right? And so, again, there's good morning. Again, there's, there are rules that there's lots of rules to being a man, right? And so, for the most part, I have to follow them in society, right? If I don't, there will be sanctions, right? There will be punishments. People will think I'm weird or not want to talk to me or stand further away from me, or may try to find a way to fire me from my job, right? So I do have to follow gender rules, right? But of course, most of us kind of want to follow them anyway. Most of us want to follow them anyway because we've internalized them as part of our identity and part of our personality, right? So my society tells me that men shouldn't wear dresses, and probably as a result of that, I have no desire to wear one, right? There's nothing wrong with wearing one. Women look beautiful in them. Some men look beautiful in them, but I have no desire to wear one, right? And again, that has to do probably to a good degree with my socialization, right? I've been taught that, men don't wear dresses. Dresses aren't flattering on men. I've been taught that, and so I have no desire to wear one, right? And so, again, we've kind of been taught these rules, but we also internalize them, and they become part of our identity and part of who we are. But I think what we also pointed out on Friday was that even though we might internalize these rules, even though we might start acting them out, even though we might like following the rules, right? So for instance, girls are supposed to wear makeup. Of course, you don't have to, but you're supposed to, quote unquote. And you may actually like to wear makeup, right? Some girls really like applying their makeup. They like being creative with it. They like how they look. And so they really lean into it. And that's okay, right? So sometimes we follow the rules because we have to. Sometimes we wind up liking following the rules anyway, right? But either way, those rules are, for the most part, culturally constructed, right? So I think we all, again, intuitively know that there are biological differences between men and women. Duh, right? But a lot of the rules that we have around gender roles are not necessarily connected to any biological difference. They're more connected to culture, right? And what culture wants and doesn't want for certain genders. Okay. So one of the points of this class is to try to explore other perspectives, right? We said at the beginning that there was this thing called positionality, right? Where people's experience of society is different depending on who you actually are, right? And so sometimes it's hard for me to sit up here and teach this class because I am a white male Canadian, right? And so there's a lot of perspectives that I don't see or experience. And so in the interest of trying to bring other voices into the room, I wanted to watch this with you. And so this is a documentary. It came out a few years ago. It might be like 3 or 4 years old, called The T Word. And so it was shown on MTV, and it was hosted by, or it's produced by Laverne Cox. Does anyone know who Laverne is? Anyone ever seen Orange is the New Black? Heard of it, okay. On Netflix, yes. So Laverne Cox is an actress, or actor, I guess I should say, on the Netflix show Orange is the New Black. She showed up in a couple of other things too. I think she might be in one of Taylor Swift's videos, and she's been in other things, so she's a successful actor. She's also a trans woman. And so she produced this documentary, and what she does is she kind of goes around the US and talks to, I think, 4 or 5 young people who are transgender. And so she talks about their experience in society and in school and with their families. And we get to kind of hear, again, what society is like through their eyes, what their experience is like. And so again, that's an experience that I can't really speak to, but Laverne certainly can, and the rest of the young people in this documentary can as well. So as usual, I have a bunch of questions that I would like you to answer as we watch this. And so I've just I've just posted them in Microsoft Teams right now. And so I'll kind of show you what they are. I'll show you what they are really quickly. Is it here? No. Is it here? Yes. So the questions I'll ask you are these. I'll ask you, how has socialization played a role in the lives of these young people? And as I say, I think there's about 5 of them that that Laverne talks to. How do these young people know their gender? And I'm thinking their gender identity here. How do they know it? Why is language important when talking to and when talking about transgender individuals? Why was Kai is one of the young people that you'll meet, why was he asked so many questions about his gender identity rather than his athletic performance? Okay, so we'll meet Kai. Why do some people not want to use the pronouns that trans people request? Okay, so pronouns like he, she, z, or they. So there's a few different ones. Why do you think some male students were uncomfortable with Ari's presence in the locker room? You'll meet Ari very shortly. Why is dating much more difficult for trans individuals? We'll see that. We'll hear about passing privilege. Why are trans people the victim of bullying, discrimination, and harassment? And why are trans women like Daniela, we'll meet Daniela as well, why are they so vulnerable? Okay, so those are the questions I will ask you. Not super difficult, but there they are. So they're posted in Microsoft Teams. For online people, the link to the video is also posted as well. So what I will do is, what have we got, 10:18? Okay, let's watch 25 minutes of it, then take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the questions, okay? So that'll give us about 35 minutes or so. So I'm going to put that on the clock. I'm going to put that on the clock. Hello, there we go. I'm going to put that on the clock, and so online people, go and watch 25 minutes, answer the questions, take a break, and then we'll come back here and talk about what we've seen, and we'll do the same here in class, okay? All right. No, I just got an 11 like a month ago, so I'm all set for the next 3 years probably. Why? What's the big deal about the 12?
I don't know, like it released today, but there's no information yet.
Hmm.
There's no price point, model.
Was 11 was And we're back. Okay, so far about partway through the T word here, we've met a few young people, right? We've met Ari, we've met Zoe, the girl in pink, right? Ari's the guitar player, Zoe is the girl in pink. We have met Kai, the basketball player. We have met Shane, right, who's dating Jessica. We have met Daniela. We have met Avery. I think we've met everybody. I think that's all of our trans people in here, and of course Laverne Cox, our lovely host, right? So my first question for you is how do you think socialization has played a role in the lives of these young people? How has socialization played a role in their lives?
Like some of the young people in the videos, like they feel guilty because in society the default gender is male and female. Yeah, and their parents like sanction them for that.
Right. So, socialization has taught them and most of us that there's only two genders, right? And if you're born a boy, then you're a boy, and if you're born a girl, then you're a girl. And these kids are having a kind of a different experience, right? And we'll talk about it in a minute, but they're having a different experience from quite a young age sometimes, right? So that's, I think we can only imagine, is very confusing and stressful for them, right? To, society is telling you that no, you were born a girl, so you're a girl, and yet they somehow feel otherwise, right? What else? What other things can you say about how socialization has played a role in these young people's lives?
So are they trained to act as like a boy or a girl?
Well, I think most of them, yes, I think that's true.
But they are trained to act.
So the thing is that they're trying to, all of these individuals are trying to present themselves to society as the gender they feel inside. And so, so they're, I guess they're trying to, act like the gender they are in the same way that all of us are, right? Anna, are you trying to act like a girl? Really hard? Are you trying really hard? No, but you're doing it, right? And so similarly, these people are doing it too. The only difference is that sometimes when society looks at them, they don't see a girl, or they don't see a cis girl, right? And so that's kind of getting in the way of people accepting them. But of course, again, I think all of us try to act like the gender that we are, right? And so that's what these young people are going through. But of course, But yeah, we can say more. How else is socialization influencing these young people's lives?
They have been dressed as a girl or boy at first.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want to dress like that.
But it never, yeah. So we have clothes that are appropriate for boys and girls. Of course, we have lots of clothes that work for both, but we have clothing that's appropriate for boys and girls. These kids are dressed according to the sex assigned at birth, but in some cases they don't like the clothes they're wearing because they're girl clothes and I'm a guy, or they're guy clothes and I'm a girl, right? Yeah, and how do we decide what clothes are girl clothes and what clothes are guy clothes? How do we know?
The dresses that they're normal for boys and girls,
Yep. Yeah.
we view them as normal.
Yeah, and why do we view them as normal?
We've been socialized.
Yeah, exactly. We've been socialized to think of things as normal, right? Dresses are normal for girls, not so normal for guys, right? And so, again, these young people are exposed to the same social messages that we are, right? So we all know that girls are the ones who wear dresses. I'm simplifying, but I'm just going to say, just for now, girls are the ones who wear dresses, and so individuals who identify as girls, they want to wear dresses, right? They want to look pretty like other girls do. The only difference here, of course, is that their sex assigned at birth was not female, right? It was assigned as male. Other ways in which socialization has played a role in these young people's lives? What?
Toys like the Barbie doll.
Sure, right? The appropriate toys for boys and girls, right? So girls, Okay, give me. So let's say a Barbie doll is a stereotypical girl's toy. What's a stereotypical boy's toy? Cars or trucks or things like that. Okay. Do you think girls want to play with trucks?
Some girls.
Sometimes. Do you think boys want to play with Barbie dolls? Less so. Why is that? Is it something about girls? Is it something about the toy?
Because they have been socialized.
Is it something about socialization?
Yeah, like
No, I think it's based on like the feeling, emotion, and your hobbies. So not something socialized.
Could be something to do with emotions as well. Do boys ever play with dolls?
Some of them,
What's that?
some of them, I think if they like doors.
What if we called them? What if we didn't call them dolls? What if we called them action figures? Right. So what if it wasn't? What if this plastic symbol of a human being wasn't, a blonde-haired woman like Barbie? What if it was Batman? Right. So boys would play with dolls too, and sometimes they do, but we don't call them dolls. We call them action figures, and it's Batman, and he punches people in the face instead of, instead of brushing her hair, you punch people in the face with Batman, right? But so yeah, we have dolls for boys and girls, but sometimes we use different words, and the dolls themselves are different, and the function of the dolls are different, right? Barbie is meant to dress up, right, and comb her hair and make her pretty. Batman is there to kick butt, right, and fight crime and work out his personal issues. Right? That's what he's for. Anything else about socialization and the lives of these young people in particular?
Others were socialized not to see them as normal human beings.
Yeah.
They acted weirdly or they like bullied them.
Yeah, they get bullied, they're not accepted because society has no room for them, right? There's no category that they fit into. And again, we're getting into a time where there is, space for these people, or there's increasingly space, but traditionally there hasn't been, right? So you're a boy or a girl, and if somehow you don't fit into those categories, then there's no space for you, right? And so everyone is trying to get you to follow your gender roles. you don't feel like that's who you are, but there's no space for you, right? You don't exist. And so, okay, I was going to answer another question, but I won't. How do some of these young people seem to know their
These young people know their gender is about their personalities or the way they are treatment to another people. Like through when we watching the video, the boys say to us like he feel he personality is not he that boy, so just talk about that with the part and then they just figure it out.
Yeah, they just kind of seem to know, right? They just kind of figure it out, right? So I think we can agree that kids are exposed to gender roles very early in society, right? We start dressing them a certain way based on their sex assigned at birth. And we have gender roles, right? We know they watch TV, they see commercials of girls playing with dolls and guys playing with trucks. And kids are little sponges, right? They're always learning things. They're always soaking things up. And so kids very quickly identify what gender means and what gender roles there are, and they try to fit themselves into it. But they pretty quickly know whether they fit or whether they don't, right? And so some of these kids, like I think we heard from Zoe, the girl in pink, and from Ari, the guy with the guitar, I think we heard from both of those that they knew very, very early that, you know, being a boy or being a boy just didn't, or being a girl just didn't work for either of them, right? It just didn't fit. And so it's pretty interesting. These kids just seem to know, right? They just seem to know what their gender is. And so I ask you, how do you know what your gender is? I'm going to assume all of you are cisgender. You may not be, and you don't have to tell me. But how do you know?
About your emotion towards like people in other genders. Like,
Okay.
you may feel like affected to a girl, so you know if you're straight. If you're to a boy, you know if you're not straight.
That brings up a good point, because yeah, I think that's true, right? We kind of look at other people in society and try to figure out who we are based on who they are, right? And so that's kind of the role of like role models or heroes that we might have as kids, whether they're cartoon characters or movie characters, or maybe mom and dad. We kind of look at people and we're like, what am I like, right? And we imitate each other, right? That's how kids learn, right? They imitate mom and dad. If you say a bad word around a kid, the kid will imitate it and they'll start using it all the time, much to your horror, right? You have to be careful what you say and do around kids, because they will absorb it and start to imitate it. And so we're very good at kind of looking at other people in society, whether they're real people or fictional people, and kind of saying, oh yeah, that's kind of what I'd like to be like, right? We kind of align ourselves with our heroes, right? That's a natural process. But these kids seem to do that and then realize that, oh, that's me. I'm more like this, even though my physical body, people seem to think I'm this way, but I'm not. I'm something else, right? And so, again, they seem to recognize it very early. But don't forget, of course, that gender and sexuality are not the same, right? So let's take I don't think this is a question I have. So Shane in this documentary is dating Jessica. So Shane is a trans man, right? So Shane's sex assigned at birth was female, but his gender identity and now his gender expression is male. Is Shane, what's his sexual orientation, would you say? Is he straight or is he gay? Is Shane straight or gay? Gay? No? Straight? No? This is the tricky thing about about sexualities, right? Because most of the time we define sexualities according to opposites, right? Hetero is the opposite. If you're heterosexual, you like the opposite gender. If you are homosexual, homo's the same, right? You like the same gender. But here we have an individual who has, in their lifetime, started out as one gender and switched or expressed themselves as a different one. So how do we define them? Right? This is what makes sexuality weird, is because some of the terms in sexuality, we talked about the term bisexual last week, it almost assumes there's only two genders, which there may not be. So some of the terms around sexuality are a little weird that way when they connect with gender, because if you have more than two genders, suddenly the terms that we use for sexuality become a little awkward and they don't work as well. But what do you think? How can we think of Shane?
Like right now, he's dating Jessica, so we can say he's straight.
Yeah, and so this is what I'll say that too, and actually Daniel's kind of thinking what I'm thinking here. Yeah, like you have to be able to accept. You have to be able to accept their gender, right? And so if Shane tells us, look, I'm a guy, I've always been a guy in here, I'm living my life as a guy, and, I like Jessica, right? And so it's really, his sexual orientation is not really any of our business, but I'm just trying to talk about it here. So yeah, we have to kind of accept his gender first, right? We have to accept him as a man, and then we can sort of describe his sexuality, right? So I would agree with that. I think we should see him as a straight man. I think that's probably how he would see himself, even though he doesn't talk about it in the documentary here, but I think he would see himself that way. And so we kind of have to make that first step, right? We have to accept him the way he's presenting himself to us, and then we can sort of describe him further. So, but again, if you didn't accept that, if you said, no, Shane's a woman, Shane was born a woman, he's just doing this, who knows what he's doing, then it becomes more difficult to define his sexuality, right? If you don't accept what he's trying to, how he's trying to express himself. So, yeah, I would say that, we kind of have to accept him first, and then once we do, then you can talk about sexuality. And yeah, I think he's probably a straight man. I think that's probably how he would describe himself.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So Shane, who's a transgender, he dated Jessica.
Yeah.
Is Jessica straight or transgender?
Yeah, and well, Jessica, as far as I know, she doesn't talk about it, but I assume she is a cis woman. So she's regular, sex assigned at birth was female, she's a woman in here, she's a young woman, and so she's dating Shane. And so, yeah, and so that becomes tricky as well. What do you think? How do we define, not that it's any of our business, but how do we define Jessica's sexuality? Or how do you think she might define it?
She's straight, but society might perceive her as like trans.
Okay.
Because she's a transgender.
Right, so she's dating a trans man, right? So it gets complicated there.
I think she's straight, and she just accept Shane is a man, a usual man. So I think she's straight.
Yeah. So if she accepts Shane as a man, then I think we can think of her as straight, right? And for Jessica, perhaps, and we don't need to get too into the details of this because it's pretty personal, but for the two of them, maybe Jessica doesn't really care about what's in Shane's pants, right? And so they sort of, they got naked with each other, and Shane was a little nervous about what she might think because he doesn't look like a man down there. And, she said, look, I'm dating you as a person. I don't care what's down there. there's only two options pretty much, right? And she's like, I'm familiar with both of those things. So, you know, I'm fine with it, right? And that's okay, right? But I think we could probably think of her as a straight woman. That might not be the case entirely, but, you know, again, I think if we have to accept Shane's gender identity first, right? And then we can talk about the other stuff. And again, you know, the sexuality is a difficult thing, right? Are you, you know, if you're a straight woman, you know, are you attracted to men, or are you attracted to a particular part of their body, and that's it? Men, right? I would imagine the whole man, not just one part, right? So again, for Jessica, she's dating the whole man, and yes, there's one part that is different, but you know, for her, if it's, you know, if it doesn't matter to her, then it doesn't matter, right? But again, it makes things a little more complicated to think about, right? Because again, there's more than two categories, and everybody's not the same, right? Did you have one more question?
Yeah, is there any situation where like a transgender date another transgender?
Sure, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it would be kind of weird.
It would be, and we'll get to this a little bit later. I don't want to jump ahead on this conversation, but and maybe actually I won't. Maybe we'll press pause on that, because the idea of, you know, trans people and dating is going to come up with Avery very shortly. So press pause on that, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. Why is language important when talking to and about transgender individuals? So what do they talk about in terms of language? What's that? How they want to be described or referred to, yeah?
Yeah, they didn't like people using it
Yeah,
for them.
which I think I can understand that. That would feel pretty awful if someone referred to you as it, right? So it is definitely bad. What else? What other words are hurtful?
Not identifying them as a human, like as a special gender.
Yeah, some people speak in ways that dehumanize them, right? To make them seem less than human. That feels pretty awful too. What else? Gabrielle says pronouns, yeah. So whether you use he or she, so Shane wants to be referred to as a he, right? Because that's who he is. So does Ari, and so does Kai, right? And we see Kai kind of struggle a little bit in that Zoom call or FaceTime call or whatever with his mom, right? Because his mom has a lot of difficulty seeing him as a man, right? Because of course Kai was born, her sex assigned at birth was female, and his mom raised him as a girl for most of his life, right? So she's still having a lot of trouble seeing him as a young man. Let's focus on that though. Why is that? I think it's pretty obvious that that's hurtful to Kai, right? Kai's having a lot of trouble with that. Why is it so? Why is it such a big thing?
Singular pronouns invalidates what they feel they are. So if he calls someone who's a trans man a she, then it basically just tells them that you don't accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
That's why it's
Exactly, right? So naming is important, right? Language is important because we use language, we use words to construct our reality, right? What we say something is what a thing is, right? If we say this is a table, that's what makes it a table, is because we all say it is. But how we refer to people is also very powerful because it indicates whether we accept them or whether we don't. You know, like Avera, how would it feel as like, Avera, that's such a complicated name to remember. I'm just going to call you Jenny. What do you think about that, Jenny? What's that?
I would think you're not the best human being on the planet.
You would think I was not, in contrast to what you think now, which is that I am the best human being on the planet, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Vera. But anyway, if I were to call a Vera Jenny, if I were to just say, what am I doing? Well, I'm ignoring her identity, right? I'm ignoring who she is. I'm basically saying to her, ugh, I don't care about this, or I don't accept this about you. I'm going to impose my own views on you, my own stereotype, my own idea of who you are. And Avera's response to that will probably be like, no, that's not who I am. Avera is who I am, right? That's what I want you to call me. And when I call you that, that shows that I accept that about you. Bless you. That shows that I accept that about you, right? And so similarly, imagine how hurtful it is for Kai to hear that his mom cannot accept who he is.
Like, how, maybe he's thinking like, how can society accept the way I am if my own mom can't accept me?
Right. And so that's probably going through his mind too, right? How is society going to accept me? How will anyone accept me if my own mother is struggling with this? And it seems like they have a pretty good relationship, right? She obviously loves her son, even though she has trouble seeing him as he is, and he obviously loves his mother, right? I think that's pretty clear, but still hurtful, right? And so she's, having trouble acknowledging who he actually is, right? And so again, language doesn't seem like it's very important, right? It doesn't seem like pronouns or words are very important, but they are, because they define how we see things and they let people know whether we accept them or not, right? And so for people who are not going to be easily accepted in all cases, yeah, that can be pretty hurtful, right? Oh yeah, Kai was asked a lot of questions about his gender identity rather than his athletic performance, right? So what was going on there? So Kai was a basketball player, played as a woman in women's basketball, and then partway through decided, you know what, I'm tired of living as a woman. I'm going to transition now and, live my life as a man, play basketball as a man, and then got tons of questions. Now, why did he get so many questions about that?
Because he's the first person, or first transgender who play sport competitive.
Okay, so there's a novelty piece to this, right? He's the first kind of openly trans athlete, professional athlete. So people, I guess it's understandable that people may have some questions about that. Why else was he asked so many questions about that? Avera first, and then.
When it comes to sports, our physical bodies are very important, and it's very evident that male and female bodies are different because guys have more testosterone. So when you switch over, there are a lot of uncertainties.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of that, but that's true, right? Athletics rely on people's physical bodies. There are differences between male and female physical bodies, and so, yeah, that questions arise, right? Particularly in gendered sports like basketball. There's women's basketball and men's basketball. Where does Kai get to play now, right? And so that's a question, right? That's an open question. Well, I'm sure it's not open, but it's something people would have to consider. Aliana, what were you going to say?
Because he's famous and like people hear the huge deal every single thing.
Okay, I'm not sure how famous he was before. He became more famous after this, but it's true. People who are professional athletes, they get media time, right? People do interview them. Do you have any idea what I'm getting at with the resume study?
Yeah, that they're not normal in a way that's like people see a girls group like native girls only, but when he's a man, so he's left out.
Right. So, yeah, he is. We expect certain things, right? We expect basketball players. We expect teachers. We see people a certain way, and when somebody violates our filters, right? When somebody is different than we expect, suddenly those filters come up, right? And for Kai, it's exactly what happens. Suddenly he's not an athlete anymore. Suddenly he's a transgender person. He's a trans person. And so suddenly all the questions are about that, right? About his gender, about his transition, about whether he has crushes on his teammates or anything like that. And again, none of that is A, anyone's business, right? And B, it's not relevant because he's a basketball player. Ask him about the game, right? Don't ask him about what's in his pants or his gender, because as Kai points out, nobody asks LeBron James about that stuff, right? Kobe Bryant doesn't have to field questions about his gender or what's in his pants, right? People just ask him about basketball. And so again, that's all that Kai is asking is, don't ask about my gender, ask about my basketball stuff, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to play basketball, right? Oh yeah, we did get to that one. So I think we know why. Well, let's just answer the question. Why are some people not want to use these pronouns? So why would somebody not want to call someone he rather than she? Or why might someone not want to use sie or they?
It's not who they are. It's pretty obvious that if you're a man, then you want to be called he.
Mm-hmm.
So when you call them she's, like ignoring them, basically.
Yeah, but why would the person not want to use the word? Like, why would somebody not want to? You know, for me, for instance, if I wanted to call Avera Jenny, why would I think that way? Why would I want to do that? Why wouldn't I just not call her Avera?
The person personally doesn't accept the idea of transgender.
Hmm?
Yeah, like if you, like the Kai, I think he said, like his mom is very Christian and the Bible doesn't say so. So she's been socialized in a way that doesn't accept change in gender. So they refuse to, I guess, call them by the pronouns they wish because that creates a conflict with what they believe in.
Right. So yeah, they may have reasonably strong beliefs, and they may not accept the fact that someone is transgender, right? So yeah, we see that with Kai's mom. Kai's mom can't seem to do it, right? Can't seem to call Kai her son, and she can't seem to see him that way. And again, religion is, I think Sabrina brought religion up a little bit earlier when we were talking about something. But religion is part of socialization as well. And religion is a very strong agent of socialization, and it's also very resistant to change, right? So, you know, when you have a book, whatever religion you belong to, if you have a book and your people believe that it is the Word of God, it's pretty difficult to challenge that book, right? Everything in that book, if you imagine it to be written by God, then it's hard to challenge, right? If you imagine it to be written by a person, yeah, people make mistakes all the time. It's easy to challenge, right? But when it comes from up there, it becomes much more sticky, right? It's much more difficult to even to just make changes to it. And so here we can see that it seems that Kai's mom is Christian, fairly strongly Christian. This conflicts with her religious beliefs, and so she's really having a hard time using those pronouns. So yeah, it's a personal belief, but it's also a non-acceptance, right? So again, when somebody says, oh, I don't want to do that, it's like, well, why not, right? Like, how hard is it to use a different word for someone, right? I get 50 to 80 new students every term, and I have to remember all their names. It's not that big of a deal, right? You can very easily learn to use a different pronoun if somebody asks you, right? So it's not difficult, but it does, I think, illuminate people's beliefs, right? And whether they accept the person for who they are or whether they don't accept them. Okay, and last one. Oh, yeah. So I think we saw this, right? Some of the did we talk about this, or did Ari talk about this? Yeah. So he said some guys were uncomfortable with him being in the locker room. Why do you think that was? Because what? Okay, so they might have continued to see Ari as a girl, right? Why else? Why else? There's more. Why might those guys been uncomfortable?
They're afraid that Ari may like be feeded by their pee.
He might. Oh yeah. The accusation was that he was watching them pee, but he says that's weird. Nobody watches anyone pee. What are you talking about? Which I think is fair. Nobody watches anyone pee. That's ridiculous. But the guys complained nonetheless. Why else do you think they might have complained? What other things were behind it, do you think?
Very negative, they have negative connotations towards transgender people, and the locker room is a very vulnerable place. Like things can change, so they don't like the presence of something they're not familiar with.
Okay.
Comfort zone, maybe.
Okay, so it might be a very vulnerable space, although male change rooms are not usually described that way, but I know what you're saying. So, but yeah, and Ari is something different, right? Someone that people aren't comfortable or don't kind of understand or don't know how to interact with, and so people might be a little uncomfortable, right? Why else do you think? Why else do you think that they might have been? They could be transphobic, right? I don't know if I don't usually like to use the word phobic, although I know they do. Like they use it for transphobic and homophobic and Islamophobic, and it's not like people have some ingrained fear of, it's not like some fight or flight response toward Muslims. You don't have a phobia. You're just, you're expressing a religious prejudice, right? Like it's not a phobia, but people use that, right? So yeah, it could be a bit of transphobia, right? So they may be uncomfortable or unaccepting of trans people. But what else? The other phobia. Do you think there's a little bit of homophobia mixed in here? Because what's Ari's sexuality? What's his sexual orientation?
Girl.
Yeah, would you say he's straight or gay? What do you think? Has he had lots of girlfriends? That's what he says, right? Is he really happy when Rachel shows up at his birthday party?
Yeah.
Yes, he is. He was kind of hoping Rachel would show up, right? And then she did. Exciting. So yeah, Ari is a straight guy. And so again, there's the tendency for people to confuse or conflate gender and sexuality, right? And so again, if you insist on seeing Ari as a woman, and if you insist on seeing everyone as heterosexual, then it's easy to imagine, Ari must be gay, right? But he's not. He's not a woman, and he's not gay, right? He is a straight man who happens to have been born a woman, right? Born a girl. But he's a straight guy. And so again, he's not interested in, those guys can get naked in the locker room all day long. He's not interested in it, right? He doesn't care. But again, their perceptions of him are, they're probably a number of things, right? There's probably a little bit of transphobia. There's probably a little bit of homophobia. There's probably just a little bit of, bullying people who are different, which tends to happen at school anyway. There's probably a mix of things happening, right? But again, I wanted to bring that in there because, again, there's a confusion between gender and sexuality, right? And especially in locker rooms and bathrooms, because how do we separate out bathrooms? By gender or by sexuality? By gender, right? So, which is interesting because there's gay guys in the locker room with me, and there's lesbians in the locker room with girls, right? But why do we divide them? Why do we divide the genders? I think it's more for sexuality reasons, isn't it? Yeah, but interestingly, that division assumes that everyone is straight, which everyone is not, right? So again, it kind of becomes a weird thing, right? It almost seems like us guys should be changing with the lesbian women, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, I just wanted to say that some things we assume some things to be one way or the other, and sometimes they're not. Okay. Let's talk about, Kang, let's talk about your thing before, because we probably don't have time to sort of dig back into the video. Let's talk about dating trans people. Okay, so what we're going to see tomorrow when we start up again is we'll see Avery. So Avery's the young woman with the really long dark hair, and she's online dating, right? So she's using dating apps. She's online looking for love, right? Like millions of other people. How do you think that might be difficult for her? In what ways do you think that might be difficult for her?
People don't automatically assume interest. So when you bring it up, they might start pushing you away, rejecting you. And she also mentions violence.
Yeah, could actually be, yeah, so it could be a little uncomfortable, right, for someone to learn that she's a trans woman when they didn't know. And it could be dangerous as well, right? Why might it be dangerous? So imagine Avery's, she swipes right on some guy. The guy swipes right on her too. They're connected. They message a few times. Haha, they seem to get along. They go out for coffee. They have a nice date. And then Avery says, oh, and by the way, I'm a trans woman, just so you know. Now, why might that be dangerous for her? Might have a strong reaction. Why do you think, why would they have such a strong reaction? Nothing's happened, right? Nobody's touched anyone, nobody's kissed anyone, they just met for coffee. It's all very innocent. There's no sexting going on. Everything's fine, but why? Yes, it very well could. But why might there be a violent reaction, do you think, to her saying that?
The iceberg theory that you mentioned, like in the first sessions,
Mm-hmm.
the sexual orientation was in deep parts, so people had strong reactions towards it.
Right. So yeah. So this is so gender and sexual orientation and sexual behavior are very deeply held parts of culture and identity, and so so people will have a strong emotional reaction. Gabrielle says some people might feel that they were betrayed, right? So they might assume that Avery is a cis woman, and then there's this revelation, oh my gosh, you're a trans woman, right? So yeah, that's true. They might feel misled or betrayed. But why the violence, do you think? Right. So there could be a religious aspect to this, right? Of feeling that to be a trans person is wrong. But what do you think? So Avery's a woman, right? Her gender identity is woman. She's living her life as a woman. She sees the cute guy. She swipes right on him. They meet. They have a nice time having coffee. Is she straight or gay?
Pretty straight.
Straight, right? She's interested in guys, which you'll find out, I think she is. And what about the guy? Is he straight or gay? Straight, yeah, because he's interacting with her and perceiving her as a woman, and she is presenting herself as one. But do you think that if that guy gets the news that he's sitting across the table having a great coffee date with a transgender woman, do you think that he might feel that his sexuality is threatened?
Yeah.
Yes.
That his idea of him being straight is now in question? Do you think so? Yeah, and in many sort of circles with many guys, in many cultures even, to be gay is not okay, right? And so I think I'm suggesting that's where the violence maybe comes from, right? Is the idea is that if I'm sitting across the table having a first date with a woman and it's going well and I like her and everything's going fine, and then suddenly, oh, by the way, she's a transgender woman, yeah, that might cause me to question my own sexuality. It should not, because Avery is a woman, but it might cause that reaction anyway. And for some guys who are very strongly homophobic, they might have a violent reaction because suddenly they're questioning their sexuality and they can't do it, right? They just don't have they're just not able to even consider that. Is it okay for me or another guy not to date Avery because she's a trans woman? Is it okay for me to discriminate in that way?
What's not okay with you feel uncomfortable?
Well, yeah. Well, let me turn it around. Would you date a trans person? So for those of you who are, well, yeah, would you date a trans person?
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Like if you really like them, then it doesn't matter.
If you like them, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, we love them for who they are, not their gender.
That's good. I feel like that's kind of a politically correct answer, but that's good. This is a tricky one, but here's what I'm going to say here, and this is the last thing I'll say, is that I think it is okay to discriminate if you're not comfortable, right? Because, interacting with someone and, maybe working with someone or maybe even being friends with someone is one thing, but in a romantic relationship, it's kind of a different level, right? It's a different bar. And so, I think it's okay, especially if you're not comfortable, right? So if you're, if you just don't want to date a trans person, I think that's okay. I think because people, when you're looking for someone to date, you should discriminate, right? If you don't want someone who smokes, don't date someone who smokes, right? If you're not very religious, it's probably a good idea for you not to date someone who is very strongly religious, right? So you should discriminate in a number of ways. Don't date a criminal if you can avoid it. So, don't date an alcoholic or a drug addict if you can avoid it. So I think you should discriminate when you date someone. And again, if this is something, if it does matter, what is in someone's pants to you, and I could very easily see how it would, that's okay, right? I think it's okay to, still be nice and respectful and say, okay, I don't think I'm into that kind of thing. I think you can say that, and then you can say it in a nice way, but I think it's okay in that situation to say, that's not quite what I'm looking for. Yeah, Avery.
It's
Avera.
a physical thing, so I want to ask if it's switched. If it's the color of your skin, you say I'm not sexually attracted to someone with lighter or darker skin.
Right.
Is that acceptable?
Right. And lots of people would say that, right? Lots of people prefer to, they might want to date within their race, within their religion, within their ethnicity. Some people might have preferences for people of other ethnicities or other races. I think in that case, it's okay. It's, it's like, really, come on. but also, people, you are allowed to choose who you spend your time with, particularly when you're dating. That's an important relationship. And so, I think you should try and find the person that makes you happy, right? And again, if somebody smoked, that wouldn't make me very happy. That'd probably be a bit of a deal breaker for me, at least on the first date. So like if I went to that coffee date with Avery and she was a cis woman, but she was like smoking the whole time and like blowing smoke in my face, I'd be like, okay, I'm out. I don't want smoke blown in my face for the next 20 years. Like forget it. So, again, I think you can be respectful, you can be nice to people, you can be friends with people, but I think the dating thing is another level, and I think it's, people can choose who they want to be with, right?
Does that make you, I know you don't like the term, but transphobic or racist if you say it out loud?
I don't know. Like
But I think it might hurt their feelings.
well, and that's true, and I think, the potential is there to hurt anyone's feelings, right? So let's say I meet Avery for coffee, first date, and she never tells me anything about her gender at all. I just take her to be a woman. And let's say it just doesn't go well. I'm not feeling the spark. I might say, look, Avery, this was really nice, but I don't feel anything here, so I don't think we should go out again. That might hurt her feelings too, right? And so that's when you're dating someone, or when you're dating, that's always possible that you will hurt people's feelings. You can still be really nice about it. You can still be compassionate and, let them down easy. And yeah, you can still do that. I mean, if you're just attracted to one particular race or ethnicity and that's all you date, I mean, I guess that's up to you. Even if you said it out loud, I think it's still up to you. I don't know. I guess it's a little racist, but I don't know. It's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. Daniel, what do you think?
That's a sensitive thing to talk about.
It is. That's what this class is about, sensitive stuff. But I would say, in terms of interacting with people in society, in general, whether you're, just bumping into people, or if you're working with them, or if there's friends or whatever, you can be compassionate, you can be friendly. It's really easy to do those things. You can use the right pronouns. You can treat everybody as as an individual person. Dating is a different story. You have to make sure you're with someone who's right for you, and there might be, there should be a number of things that you're looking for. And I guess, if race or ethnicity is one of them, well, then I guess it's one of them, right? Doesn't mean you have to go around, I guess as long as you don't, act in a racist way towards other members of that group, and you just say, hey, I'm not into that. Look at in Mean Girls, look at Kevin Napur. Remember Kevin? He's like, yeah, I only date women of color. He was discriminating, right? Is he racist? Not necessarily. He just says he only dates women of color. That's what he chooses to do, right? So he missed out on dating Katie, right? But I think he's allowed to do that, I think. I don't know. It's a tricky one. Okay, we've gone way over time. I'm sorry. I'm going to end this now. We'll finish watching this tomorrow, online people. Good participation. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.